Okay, so I'm going to start the project from scratch from a PDF file, or with a PDF file that I have as a reference for my site plan. And so if you're starting this way, you do need to know the size of at least one of those boundaries, or another element in the drawing. If you don't have any of those sizes, you can still use the PDF, but you'll need to get your size and your scale from the satellite image, the way I showed you last time. So I know the size of this, of the boundary in this property, so I'm using that to scale it. Alright, so in AutoCAD, I'm simply going to go to Insert, Attach, and then browse to find my PDF file. And so you can see here it's got all image files, there's a selection down the bottom, and that can be a bit off-putting. It'll look like it won't give you PDFs, but you have the option there to choose PDF from the file types, and then obviously you can choose them. So this is my site plan, double click to insert that, and we have the same options you would have for an image or anything else you're inserting into AutoCAD. And so just as before, I'm going to turn off particularly the scale. I don't want to scale that on the screen with my cursor. So once I've turned those off, I'll click OK. And then I'm going to double click with the wheel to do a zoom extents. And you can see that it may have looked like it came in better than maybe an image would, but now it's disappeared. I'm going to type RE for regen, and it's doing it to me again. Let's just see what's happening there. That does happen a bit with PDF. So you can see the PDF is coming in. When I select it, you can see the line work is actually there, but at certain views or certain zooms, it's a bit hard to see. And that's because of the way some PDFs are formatted or stored. They keep the lines as vectors in some cases, and that can be a good thing. So here I can trace lines, and they'll snap to endpoints and other elements or other parts of those elements from my site drawing. So PDFs can be better than AutoCAD drawings. So you can see they're much more accurate. So better than scanned images or satellite images. So that's always an option. Just undoing that though. Okay, but if the PDF is too difficult to work with, or if it's a different kind of PDF, this, like I said, is one that has vectors. I'm going to show you a trick with Photoshop. I'm going to go just to the 32-bit version. So here you can see there are two versions of Photoshop, and generally it's better to use the 64-bit version, but there are some things the 32-bit version has that the 64-bit doesn't. Okay, so it might seem a bit off topic to go and start working in Photoshop, but it's actually a common thing that you'll need to do at this stage to format and generally work with the reference image, either the PDF or the scanned image or something you've downloaded, and then adjust that in Photoshop. So I'm opening up the PDF file that I've just shown you, and so you'll see there you get an option to give a resolution, which shows you that it's rasterizing it. It's converting this into pixels. Okay, so it's still coming with a transparent background, but if you zoom in you'll see that they are pixels, not lines. And that's, well, it can be a good and a bad thing. in AutoCAD, I'd probably prefer to have vectors or lines. But again, if I want a white background, I'd generally want pixels. And also, if you want to go into Revit, it needs to be a JPEG. You can't insert PDFs directly into Revit. So this is just a useful thing you need to know. If you need to insert a PDF file or something that you only have as a PDF into Revit, simply open it up in Photoshop and then do what I'm doing now, save as, JPEG. And then you'll see it'll lose the transparent background. Not here, but if you saw it just a moment ago, it did flash with a white background because JPEGs can't store transparencies. So I'm going to just get something in Revit. Okay, just ignore that. Okay, Revit's crashed. That's great. Well, I was just going to show you that in Revit you can insert an image, and I'm sure you've inserted images before in Revit. So on the Insert tab, click the Image button, and you can insert any JPEG file. And that is a useful thing. So you'll often get things that are PDFs that you need to insert into Revit. So back in AutoCAD though, I've got this this drawing, and so you can see the lines are there. I just need to zoom in to be able to see them. That's okay. And then the size I can now check by measuring. So just like you did with the satellite image, I'm going to use measure. Okay, so with the satellite image you could tell the size in properties, but in this case I want the size just of one part of the drawing. So I've measured across, clicking 2 points, and you can see there the distance 104,562 is actually the size that it should be. And that's another thing that can happen with PDFs. When you get a PDF that's been made from AutoCAD, chances are when you take it back it will be the right size. Yeah. So if you're lucky, that's what will happen. But let's just say that hasn't happened. Okay, so you've gotten it from a unusual source, or from someone other than yourself, and it's at a different scale. So I'm just scaling it pretty randomly here. So I'm just making up an arbitrary number. So this is how you might receive it. And so I'll look at this and measure it. So again, from the very edge here, all the way across. Okay, so I know it should be 104 metres roughly, 104,550 is exactly what it should be, and it's 5750 now. So 5750, and we'll ignore the decimals. So I can now scale, again using the scale button, select the image, enter, and then for the base point 0,0, enter, and then the scale factor. If you remember the little rule of thumb, the size you want it to be over the size it is. So 104,550 is the size I want it to be. I want it to be 104 metres by 50 mil, and then over, I'm just hitting F2 there to bring up the measurement above, which you can see is, let's say it's 5750. Enter, double click with the wheel, and now I can measure just to check that my maths was right and also that I've done everything else right. So measuring across there now, you can see that is pretty close, within 10 mil of the right size. Now if I'd included decimals there, it would have been precise, but that's close enough. 10 mil on a site that big is easily acceptable margin of error. So it's really just the same method I showed you with the image, and so you should be able to do the same thing when you insert a satellite image to match that. And I'm just going to prove that to you. So with the Google image one last time, and I know I've shown this to you before, but I think it doesn't hurt at all to repeat it. So Control Print Screen to capture. Well, I think print screen on its own should work, but Control seems to help. And then I've just opened up Paint, and I'll do Control V to paste, and then zoom out a bit. And I've lost my it's my view controls, and I will crop it just a little bit. So just making a window, and well, a little tip there, if you're using Paint, you seem to need to click on this select button even when it looks like it's highlighted already, if you want to do a new window. So I'm clicking on that marquee, clicking and dragging to make a window for the area I want cropped. That'll do. And then I'll click the crop button next to select, and that will crop it. Now I can save as, and go to same folder. The format here isn't really that important, so you could use PNG, which is what it defaults to, or JPEG is fine as well. So tram sheds, site plan, satellite. Double L or 1L? No. Okay, so if I go to, again, insert and then attach, now you can see it's still on PDF, so it won't show me that image file. If I go back to all image files at the base, and then now I can see my new image. Again, I'll open this, and this time I'm going to leave specify on screen specified for the insertion point. I'll turn it off for scale, so that means I'll get to click a point on the screen to place the image. If I click OK, and I'm just going to place it above the previous drawing, and you can see then that it's very small. That's fine. And so I've measured the boundary of the bottom here, and that's a little bit hard to see on this drawing you can see there. So it probably makes more sense to measure one of those walls, which I can see clearly on my satellite image. So I'm going to use again measure that all the way along that front wall there, or the wall, you know, on the east side. Okay, so that is 51 metres and 50 mil. So if I zoom in on that image, so that should be this wall here. So I'll measure that. Okay, so again, as closely as I can, I'll adjust it. So it's 56 mil. Yep, we'll say that's close enough. And so, now again, I can go to scale, select my image, and then again, I'll just click a base point on the corner there, and then my scale factor is, I need a bit more, there we go. So it's 51050, we'll say, the size I want it to be, over the size it is, which we'll say is 56 mil. So over 56, enter, and so again, to double check my scaling, I'll measure what it is now. So you can see there 51 metres is the size, and I've forgotten what it should have been, 5150, and it's, gee, that's pretty close. Okay, so, and you can visually compare it. If you don't get it right the first time, it's just like in real life when you're scaling things with a photocopier or some other method, you can visually check the size by measuring or using your eyes. It's the same thing, and that's really what I'm trying to get you to think about in programs like this, that it really is a lot like working in the real world. And so comparing these two drawings now, you can see though that the building here is rotated to line up with the page, as it should be. So these drawings, the plans for this should all be oriented that way on the page and final printout. But here the building's rotated so that the image is oriented to true north. So I'm going to rotate this in AutoCAD, first by drawing a line. So just the line tool along the base of the building, and then I'll just pick up that edge as best I can. That looks, that'll do. Okay, so I've got a line there traced over my image which I can use essentially as a baseline. So with rotate, I'll select the image and the line, enter, and then it'll ask me for a base point. So with rotate, I mean you'd all use rotate, I'm sure. If you're using AutoCAD, it's one of those essential commands. But when you get to this point, after giving a base point, you might not have seen that there's a reference option, which, just trust me on this one, it's an essential tool or essential option you need to know if you're going to be using AutoCAD to do real design work, because it lets you line up angles exactly. So if you've ever wanted to rotate something to line up exactly with something else, that's the option you have to use basically. So if you haven't used this one, just have a look at the way it works. Okay, so it's essentially after you've given the base point, you can just click on reference down here to use it, or type R and then enter. And then this part really is, I think, what trips everyone up. You need to remember to give a base or a new base point to start your new angle. So I've already given a base point, but I'm going to click this point again, and now I'm going to give a second point, which is anywhere on that line. So that's like my starting angle. I'm picking up that line to measure the angle from the line. And now, if I turn ortho on, to simply bring that across to the right so that it's snapping to 0 degrees or a straight line. Okay, so you can see now I've rotated it so the building's straight. Now you might remember last week we looked at using a reference plane in Revit to mark true north, which is a really useful step. And you might think, well, I could have done that before with a line here in AutoCAD and that would have been a useful thing. But remember, luckily, you've got the side of the image. If you forget to do that, that should be pointing to true north. So you've always got that. But now you can see I've got the satellite image, the same size as the PDF. The PDF is going underneath, so I'm going to use another little trick there. When you select a PDF, insert into AutoCAD, you can always right click and then go to draw order and then bring to front. It's unfortunately it's got white lines, so they're a bit hard to see there, but there we are. So if I line those up, let's just click move. So, well, I'll just tell you what I'm doing there. With images you've inserted into AutoCAD, when you select them, it'll take you to a special image tab. And so if you want the regular tools, you just need to go back to the tab you want. So they're all still available. If you go back to the home tab, you can still click move. So I'm going to pick it up on the end of my line there. Doesn't matter if the line's not. Okay, so I'll move the line too. So I'm going to click move and type P, enter, and that'll pick up the image. So that's another handy shortcut in AutoCAD. It selects the previous. And now click on the line as well, so I've got 2 total selected. And then I'll use the corner of the building with my base point and snap that with Auto off to the corner of the building in my PDF, which is actually going to be probably this corner. So you can see there, not bad. It could probably be adjusted a little bit, but that's when you can fine-tune things like your scaling. So I can see there, maybe, yeah, I did get the size right, but there's a bit of inconsistency there, so I might just fine-tune that slightly. So, well, I'll give you an example of that. So just using scale again, I can type P this time, and then enter, and that'll select those 2 same objects. Enter yet again, and then this time I'm going to use the end of my, or the corner of my building as a base point, and you can see it's giving this message telling me that there's a an extremely small scale factor coming up or being ignored, and that's because it's trying to use the cursor to do the scale. So you can see there it's going right off the screen. And that's just a problem in AutoCAD. So when that happens, you can fix it. You can actually fix the display and get it so that it'll just scale with the cursor. But honestly, it's not worth the trouble. And so if it's happening, it's probably better just to do or use the method I showed you before, where you measure and scale and do it that way. Okay, so in other words, here you would simply measure to the end, which is whatever it was, 8. So let's say 81566, that'll do. And then the line, we can actually just look at that length in properties, so 83157, Okay, so again, scaling. So it's using scale with both the image and the line again. Getting the line. The image, scale. So again, that corner with my base point should be good. And so, so the first one is 83175, the size I want it to be, over the size it is, which was 81566. Okay, so you can see now what's happening there. Did I scale along to do that? Well, it should be accurate, so I'll just do that again. And let's see, so measuring from the corner again to the (84815). Okay, so I don't know how I got that number wrong. Alright, so let's just scale that yet again. And this is what you'll have to do. It's really worth getting this right. So you should have to scale it maybe and then check the size and then really just pay attention to these things, because if you don't spend some time getting this right at the beginning, it's just going to create work for you at the end. So again, the first number, also this one is 8. Numbers. Yeah, 81566 is the size I want it to be. We're making it smaller, of course. And then the size 84815. Okay, so that's a good example, because that's probably the first one where I've had to scale it down. So here the size I want it to be is less than the size that it is. So, fingers crossed, there we go. So that's what you want to see, and it's a really important thing to do, even if you have a PDF or some other drawing that's going to give you more detail than the satellite image will. The satellite image still is going to give you, obviously all of that information for the things around your site, and so it's an important skill to be able to have that scaled, or to be able to scale that at to get the appropriate size. And so again, I'll maybe just leave that one as it is. I could always fine-tune that even more later on. And so I just want to go on and give you some idea about the other things, because in AutoCAD, like I've been saying, you can do really all of the elements that are shown that are required for the assignment. So for the locality plan, what's going on there? Go away. For the locality plan, when it says proposed site clearly identified and then all adjacent sites and nearby sites identified, also as streets and nearby buildings and sites, what do you think that means? Like, how would they be identified? Yeah, well, definitely for your subject site, that's really important. You definitely need to do that. So you want to highlight it with, like say, maybe a dash line or some sort of boundary line, and then also hatch the side or have a different colour for that. But there should be other ways you indicate it as well. So legends, yeah, but you're getting too complicated. Just think really basic. What's the most basic way you communicate with people? Even more basic. Before you even know how to draw. Text, rating. Listen, people know with some words what they're looking at. So label things, and you can do that in AutoCAD, and there manage the scale and get all of the hierarchy set up. And it's much easier to manage sometimes than in even in the graphics programs that you might use, like Photoshop in the end to do your presentation. So all I'm getting at there is that if you do your text here, it does work really well in AutoCAD, but you need to have a good handle on setting your scale. So I've got that image there. I'm happy with the placement of it, but it's going to get in the way once I start putting a lot of other things in AutoCAD. So before I do my text, I'm going to go to a layout and make a... I'll just rename that. So right-clicking, I'll call this site satellite. And then I'll double-click inside the view, zoom to get something that I'm happy to work with, and then I'm going to set a scale down in the with the Viewport Scale bar, I suppose. Okay, so you can see then it's zoomed right in. Do you know what that means when you see that happen? Exactly, that's right. That's what you should be thinking about. When you see that happen, you know straight away the scale is what you want, but the page is causing the problem. It's too small. It's an imperial page. So if I right-click on that tab for the page, go to Page Setup Manager, modify, and we can put in a plotter and set up a page just like you would when you print. So we'll say, for now, A3 is a good size for sketch drawings. And everything else there, 1:1, layout to what to plot, and the plot style I'll just set to monochrome. Okay, so I'm going to double click outside the viewport just so I can resize that view. Double click back into it, and now I can set the scale, and I should be able to see more, but it's still only showing a very small part of what I need. So it can give you a good indication of the scales that you might need to think about with a site plan. So would you have some idea of the scale that you need for your sites? Yeah, that's right. That'd be the starting point. And I'd say for this, 1 to 500 might be more like the scale you need for A3. So down here, you've got the scales, obviously, that are already loaded. And if you go to custom, then you can add your own. So I'm going to go to add, and we'll make it, let's go and put 1 to 200 in. And then you put that in just for the drawing units. And I'll move that to the right spot in the list as well. Then I'll add the 1 to 500 at the same time. Okay. So now if I go to this list, I've got those options. So 1 to 200, it's going to be good for the building actually. Maybe I can just get that. No, not quite at A3. But 1 to 500 should be, well, it is small and you shouldn't really use that scale for your final presentations, but for drawings at this stage, it's probably a good scale because you can print at A3.
Does that size must outside?
Yeah, if you've got a smaller site, some people have got bigger sites than this even. So, so that's actually not a bad sheet to have. You can always go back and resize the viewport to get just what I want there. But that's a useful thing just to have as it is. So I'm going to keep that page, and then I'm going to right-click on that tab, move or copy. I'll tick create a copy down the bottom, and then choose layout 1 so it goes next to my current tab. Right-click on this, rename, and we'll call it Site Line Work. And then in Viewport, I'm just going to double click to go into that viewport. I need to make some layers. So I'll make a new layer for the image. And another layer for the PDF. And yet another layer for, well, let's just start with the boundary. And at least one for annotation. So I'll just set a few different colours to those. It's fairly random different colours. That'll do. Okay, so my PDF, I can move to the PDF layer by choosing it in this view. The image, I'm going to go back to the Model tab so that I can select the border there without moving the view. So here you can just change the image to the layer, and so you can see having the colours helps, so you can tell when it changes layer. And so now, if I go back to that Site Line Work page that I made, I can go to my layers and use this freezing current viewport to hide the image just in that view. Okay, so that's a really, really useful thing. So it's kind of like Revit now. I've got one view with the image on, one view with the image off, and that can make it much easier when you're working. No. See, because the light bulb would turn it off in all the views, and so would the regular freeze. That's why you've got to use the special viewport freeze. Okay, so then the final thing, to get now some text drawn, you've got a really useful option next to Viewport Scale. You've got the little padlock. So if you click on that, then you can zoom without it changing the scale inside the view exactly. Okay, so I'm just going to draw some text, just to give you an idea how to label things in AutoCAD. So even if you've used AutoCAD for a while, text can be a bit of a pain. So in the drafting annotation tab, are you using the? I'll just find out actually. How are you setting your text styles in AutoCAD? You're not? Scale? Oh, you're making one for a scale. Okay, good. That's really good. So using the old method, but that's fine. That's the way I learned originally, and I still probably would do that sometimes. And then, so you're getting to text scale and text style, I suppose, here. Well, if you're not, this is an easy way. On the tab here, Graphic Annotation, you've got this annotation panel, and there you'll see the text drop down, which has the text style button next to it. So make sure you realise that. The same for dimensions and all those things that you can format in AutoCAD. So once you go to text style, then you'll see you have the standard text style, which doesn't have a height, but you should have annotative as well. And so I'm going to double click on that to make it current. And you can see really all it has is this annotative option turned on. And it's a really, really useful option. It basically will manage the scale for you, so you don't need to have all those different text styles for every scale. Now, having said that, it's a really good thing that you've been shown how to do it the old way, because it means you understand it, and then when you go and work in an office where they're doing it the new way, you actually know what's going on behind the scenes and you know why problems are happening, and it really does give you a better understanding. So it's not a bad thing to do it the old way, but once you know the old way, then annotative is going to work really well for you. So I'm going to set a paper text height here, and when you see paper text or anything to do with paper, it just means the size you want it to print. So here I want it to print 5mm high on my page, 0.5 centimetre high, and so that's my text height. Okay, so I'm just going to choose set current, and that will apply it as well. Close, and then I will draw some text just to show you the size.
So you just mean where people put things there on the draft,
yep.
text there.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, and so and it can be really confusing when you're doing an all-on model. So if you're doing it back here, you're managing the scale yourself, and you're setting all the layers up for it. And again, it's a good thing to know about, but it's a lot of work. When you do it on the viewports like I am now, it picks the scale for you, right? Because you've chosen a scale down here for the viewport, and then you just draw your text, and it does all the rest for you. So you've got then, you've probably I'm sure seen single line and multi-line. Were you using one or the other more than another one? So or did you just use them interchangeably? Because they have their uses, and they both have their advantages. Single line text I'll do first, and that's a really good tip. If you do single line text first, then it'll ask you for a start point, so I'll just click somewhere to give that, and then a rotation angle. So it's going to have 0 to begin with, so you can press enter to keep that. And then if you type in your text, let's say I don't know the DP number off the top of my head. If you know the DP number, put it in, but let's say tram shed site, we'll do now. Okay, so if you go and do another line of text, even if you press enter to continue from the previous one, so let's just do that. Okay, so when you're typing single line text, I'll just start a new line. So hitting enter moves down to the next line, but it's still single line. So if I select one of those things, one of those lines, it'll move separately to the other one, and that can be a useful thing. So when you've just got individual notes that are often, just abbreviations, and you want to quickly adjust them, that's really useful. And then to edit, you just double click and you can just change that single line. But with multi-line text, you get the formatting bar. And so with it, you don't give a start point, you click 2 points to make a rectangle. And so you then have a formatting bar which will give you a chance to change a lot of those settings. So you can put some basic things like the height into the text style, and then as you're typing away, just change up here things like the text height. and so we might put the the overall area or something like that. So it's let's say 500 and something square meters. This is not accurate, and while we're at it, I'll show you a little trick in AutoCAD, and this is basically the last thing I want to do in this video. So that's actually the degrees one. So I'm thinking of the another one. Is it percent? Yeah, I'll look that one up. There is one for squared as well. Maybe it's S. Anyhow, so you can see there, typing %D gave me the degree symbol. So I'll just do that again, %D. And there are control characters, so basically % something else for most of those symbols that you need. And so that's a useful thing in AutoCAD. But if that isn't working for you, or if you don't want to look up all those control codes, just go into Windows and look for character map. So any program in Windows, you can just search on the Start menu, and you'll see character map. And so you can then find any of those things that you need. So with aerial, you probably won't have a... oh yeah, you will definitely have one down here, but just not in the top part. So let's see with aerial where they've got it. I don't know if I want to look through all of Arial to find that. It should be in there somewhere with Arial, but I know with other fonts, say with Technic, it will have it in a really easy to find place. So here with Technic, you've got the squared symbol in there, I'm sure. I've done it a million times, I just can't see it right now. Oh, there we are. Okay, right there. Okay, so I can then select and then copy that to the clipboard. So that copy button there will do that. And then in in AutoCAD, Control V to paste that in. Unfortunately, it doesn't go too well with Arial, but if you use a different font, it probably will. Or just set that to a different size. So it's 2.5. It's a shame it doesn't go with Arial too well, but if you try different fonts, it does work pretty well. So that can just be a handy thing. So all I'm trying to show you there is that you've got all the options with your fonts, basically, that you have with Word. Yeah, you might want to use the Arial squared though. And so they're the sorts of things you might want anyway with your notes. And so going through just quickly through the checklist. So a lot of these things you can identify with notes. So you'll know the address of the properties around your own property. Just put an outline and then put the actual address on each one. If you've got the streets labelled, then you just need to put the numbers. But that's an important thing. And then the things like contours, you can draw just with lines and splines. So hopefully you've used those tools quite a bit, but just remind you so don't forget about those things under the drawing panel that you have, like spline, if you aren't sure about those tools. Blocks, I'll say, are going to be useful, but they're really optional. So if you know blocks in AutoCAD, then think about using those for the standard symbols that you'll have for things like your landscaping and other things in AutoCAD. And then again, just make sure you do have a good look through that. And the levels, you'll definitely need to indicate, but you won't know the accurate measurements until you start drawing that in Revit and setting all your level heights there. So it can just be indicative. In other words, you can just put a note for that and just describe it as best you can. So anyhow, I won't do anything in Revit maybe with that video, but I mean, is it fairly clear how you can do really most of that work just in 2D in AutoCAD, and then Also, did I show you that you can, if you're not sure how these should be, or these should appear in the end, and I've been promising you some samples of these kinds of drawings. Oh, and of course Internet Explorer is not working on my computer. So just make sure, if you haven't seen lots of site plans and similar things already, that you do have a look at them. So if you haven't done that already, Site Analysis Plan in Google will give you plenty of samples to get an idea of the sort of graphics that you'd want. But go for the ones that have more of a design aesthetic than the ones that look really technical. And it might give you some ideas. That's exactly the kind of thing that you'd be required to do in most cases. Maybe it could be a prettier, more graphical drawing and have more design as a graphic element, but it definitely has all of the kinds of design elements that you'd want in a sketch type presentation. So, so this is a very final thing. I won't include it in the video, but just when you're thinking about how you're going to finish this assignment, remember that the graphics is important as well. So it's not a requirement. You could do all the graphics in AutoCAD, but you can definitely get better graphics if you take it into Photoshop or InDesign to do just the final presentation level. So I'll give you some pointers on that later, but just so you're aware really what you might be doing with these drawings in the end. You can see, the colours and just the general sketchy kind of drawing you see in a lot of these images. You can't do that with AutoCAD. So you can set up the lines and everything in AutoCAD, but then to do the colouring and everything, take that into Photoshop, where you can apply those patterns and fills and other things. And so for that, you'll need to take it from either AutoCAD or Revit into those programs. And so would you have an idea about the formats you would use? So to go from, there are different options, but to go from Revit or AutoCAD, it's probably best to just use PDFs. So if you print from AutoCAD to a PDF, and that'll give you a really good format to work with in Photoshop, definitely. So plot, and then you'll have the Adobe PDF to print it. Right, but yeah, I better finish that video, otherwise it'll just be too long.